Hey guys, welcome back to Andy's Dinosaur Reviews, and boy do we ever have something interesting to take a look at today. We have potentially the most universally hated Papo figure of all time, the Protoceratops. Now this is one that many people aren't a very big fan of, and that's kind of putting it mildly, and I completely understand why, because it looks ridiculous from certain angles. But I will say that here in hand, it actually does look a little better than I was expecting it to. Now, that's not saying it's a great figure. That's not even saying it's a good figure, but it looks a little better than I thought it would. I think the biggest problem with this Protoceratops is when you open the mouth, the articulated jaw. So once we actually open the mouth, you can see how absolutely insane and ridiculous the figure looks as a whole. And I feel like that was a lot of the issue with the promotional images, would be the open mouth image, and it looks really weird. And again, it definitely still looks weird here in hand, in person, but it doesn't look quite as weird, especially when the mouth is closed. I feel like it looks okay-ish, but with the mouth articulated open and everything, the jaw open, it doesn't look very good. But I will say the paint job definitely looks a little better than I was expecting it to, especially after the Styracosaurus repaint. I didn't have a very high amount of confidence in Papo to deliver a good paint job for this one, because the Styracosaurus paint job was pretty bad. And although this paint job, in my opinion, still doesn't quite meet the quality of older Papo, it's not terrible either. So, yeah, I mean, kind of mixed emotions on this one, but we're going to go ahead and jump straight to a closer look at it regardless right now. So starting up here at the head sculpt of our Protoceratops, again, you can definitely see that it looks fairly awkward, a little strange, but like I said, not as strange as when the mouth is open. Once that mouth is open, it looks really, really weird. I feel like the figure would have definitely looked a lot better if they had not given it an articulated jaw and just gave it kind of like a closed mouth, stagnant position as far as the mouth goes. Like, that would have been much nicer than what we have here. But still, I mean, it's always fun to have an articulated jaw, but not when it makes the figure look weird. But as far as the sculpt goes, you can see some pretty decent looking skin texture, some scale detail here on the face. It's not anything to write home about, and it's also not really that highly detailed. Most of the scale detail kind of looks fairly similar to each other. It almost looks like texture stamps or something like that used on it, rather than, sculpting out each and every scale. And that might be the way that they had gone about it. I'm not too sure. You can see there's some okay looking detail in the beak. You can also pick up on the nostrils. The coloration of the beak is nothing more than a black. There's no alternate tones of color or anything like that. You can see a few different variations of green, though, for the face. One thing I noticed is that they definitely had a darker green. They've used either a darker green wash or the base color was a darker green, and then they've, dry brushed the lighter green over top, which definitely highlights all of the scale detail really nicely for the figure. There's also a few bluish tones there around the eye. The blue was definitely a lot more vibrant on the prototype, more so than what we see here, but I actually think I like it a little bit better here, although you can see that there's definitely some inconsistencies as far as that blue paint application goes. The eye is painted pretty nicely. We have an orangish tone and a black pupil, and there's definitely a nice gloss coat for the eye. And you can also see that we have some darker tones of green applied. And you can see that here as we run up around the frill, there's definitely some nice darker tones of green that kind of border around the frill. And then again, some nice lighter greens as you lead down into the face a little bit more. You can also see these kind of like scoots that run up the center of the frill and then out around the frill are painted very nicely with a brown, and they also include that kind of dark greenish wash in between each of the scales, so that also looks pretty nice, again kind of highlighting those areas as well. There is a design here in the frill itself as we have a beautiful bluish tone, a really nice light blue that kind of circles around a black, and then that circles as well around an orange. Nothing super flashy, but it definitely looks pretty cool. I don't mind the paint job of this one. Again, I feel like it looks alright. You can see some varying tones of brown here in the mouth area as well. I think the beak could have looked a little better if they had added maybe like a dry brushing or something over it to kind of give it a little bit more life, but it still doesn't look that bad. But as we open the mouth, you can see that we have teeth painted here on the inside of the mouth. You can also see the tongue in there. and some okay looking detail here on the inside of the mouth on the upper side as well. And it does have a pretty nice gloss coat. The teeth are all painted pretty nicely as well, so at least we're seeing a little bit less sloppiness when it comes to the paint job of the Protoceratops over the Styracosaurus. As you lead back here behind the frill, though, that detailing is not so good. That actually looks like some of the cheapest detail I think I've ever seen on a Papo sculpt. Like, that just looks like pretty much the most generic detailing they could possibly give this figure here on the back of the frill. It almost looks like they really didn't even try back there. As you move back here into the neck, you can see a little bit of like tensing and stuff, but you continue to have that same style of scale detail pretty much through the entire figure. You can see, though, again, that we have that darker tone of green underneath all of the lighter green scales, so you know, it looks okay as far as the coloration goes. It definitely stands out quite nicely. You have more of those kind of scoots here running along the back of the Protoceratops, and the scoots have some okay looking detail in them, but nothing again to write home about. And the paintwork isn't really that great on it. It's a little bit, I think, kind of thick, I would say, as far as the paintwork goes, but you can again see once we reach back here, look at how generic that looks. The sculpting and detailing of those scoots back here is like really amateurish looking, in my opinion. Like, it just doesn't look like they put much effort into it, and that's really sad when you go from what Papo used to be like when it comes to their sculpt and detail compared to this. Like, that is a huge difference. As you move back, though, you can see the shoulder blade a little bit. You can see some muscle definition moving down the front leg here, and again, a pretty okay looking foot sculpt for the Protoceratops with some nicely painted nails. They are painted with a black, and they've been given a nice gloss coat. As you move up, you can see a little bit of girth in the stomach region, so it's, you know, not super starved or anything like that. It has a little bit of a healthy look to it, and again, the scales do get a little bit larger in the stomach region, but as you move up here, you can see some skin creasing and everything right there in the front of the rear leg. You've got the muscle definition nicely displayed as well. Not so much in the calf, but it's a little bit there. You can see again that we have more of that brown there on the back, as well as more of the brown running down the front of the shin, and that runs all the way down to the rear foot sculpt there, and there's something hanging off of the foot. I don't know what that was, some sort of fuzz that came with it, or maybe a piece of plastic or something, but you can see some okay looking creasing and everything down there in the foot with the toes, and again the nails painted with that glossy black. As you lead up here, you have some creasing right there behind the leg as well, and then you lead out into the tail. Again, you have similar looking scale detail to what we see up here, but it does look a little bit different back here. Not really great back here either, but it looks definitely a little bit different. And again, if we look here at the underside, you can see some bluish tones, but the bluish tones don't really look that great if you ask me as far as the actual application of the paint goes. You can see a little bit of the blue back here, but here on the underside of the stomach, it's really thick until it kind of wears off as it leads up into the throat region. Definitely looks more like, you know, paint rather than body color, which is a little bit of a downside. And then over here, the only real big difference that you're going to see would be the fact that the Protoceratops has its head turned to the right a little bit. So you can definitely see that aspect to the figure. You can also see some okay looking detail again in the face, and it looks pretty consistent over here compared to what we saw on the initial side. The eye paint is really nice. That's definitely a plus to see. But as you move back here, you can kind of see how the neck is like stretching and kind of tensing as the dinosaur has its head turned to the right a little bit. And you can also see the skin stretching off of the neck as this leg is trailing quite a bit. And again, nice thin looking front leg for our Protoceratops. You can see more skin creasing and stuff right there. Definitely pick up on the hip bone a little bit as well. And again, that little bit of girth in the stomach region. Nice muscle definition. And they have done a pretty good job of kind of highlighting the muscle definition with some darker tones, which is definitely nice to see. And again, the same type of look as we have kind of like scoots running down, sort of like scoots running down the front of the shin. And then again, the nicely painted nails. And then we lead back out into the tail, which doesn't really look that great. So as a whole, it's definitely not the best Papo figure. It might be the worst, honestly. There's a very good chance that it's either the worst or very close to the worst. But even with that being said, it does still look a little bit better in person than I was expecting it to. But again, by no means is it even close to as good as what older Papo used to deliver to us. As far as a size goes for our Protoceratops, for a length, you were looking at about, I would say around 6¼ inches, maybe somewhere around there, or about 16, maybe 16.5 centimeters. And then for a height, about 2 3/4 inches or a little over 7 centimeters, maybe approaching 7.5. For a size comparison, there is Mr. Papo T-Rex, the Attack Pack Colovosaurus, and Robert Muldoon from the Mattel Jurassic World toy line next to our Papo Protoceratops, and you can definitely see that it is a fairly small figure overall, pretty much honestly right in the size range you would expect for a Papo release. But for another comparison, here is the Wild Past Protoceratops next to our Papo version. The Wild Past version is so much better than the Papo version, but you can definitely see again roughly what the size is if you happen to own the Wild Past version. But for another comparison, we have the Papo Protoceratops next to the Papo Pachyrhinosaurus. Again, two ceratopsians from the Papo line. One is pretty darn nice, the other not so much, but again you can see that they're not too far off as far as the size goes. But for another comparison, here is the Papo Pentaceratops next to the Protoceratops, again showing you a good idea of the fact that the Pentaceratops is definitely quite a bit larger. And look at the difference in quality between the Pentaceratops and the Protoceratops. Like, if there was ever an image that would show you the decline in quality of Papo, this one right here is definitely a very, very good image to take note of. And then for one final comparison, we have the Papo Styracosaurus, who I was just speaking of as far as the kind of sloppy paint job, next to the brand new Protoceratops. Yes, we did get two ceratopsians this year, one of which is just a repaint, which is the Styracosaurus, a repaint of a previous figure, and then a brand new Protoceratops, but neither of which are really that great because the paint job on the Styracosaurus isn't really all that good, and the Protoceratops as a whole isn't really the best Protoceratops out there, that is definitely for sure. So this brand new Papo Protoceratops, again, it's really just not Papo quality. It really is not. I will say it definitely is a step up and definitely a step in kind of the right direction as far as the paint apps go compared to the Styracosaurus, because the paint is a lot smoother on this one. It's just generally more lifelike and looks better than the Styracosaurus did, but that being said, the sculpt itself really isn't all that good. Again, with the mouth closed, I feel like it definitely looks better than it did in the promotional images, and definitely better than I was expecting it to look here in person, but the articulated jaw is a total waste because as soon as you open the mouth and, articulate that jaw, the entire thing just looks incredibly strange, incredibly weird. As a whole, though, even with it looking a little bit better than I was expecting it to, I still don't think it looks all that good. But still, I would actually rate this, I think, a little bit higher than the Styracosaurus repaint because visually it's just nicer to look at. And again, with the mouth closed, I feel like it's not quite as terrible as I was expecting it to be, but also not near as great as I was hoping it would be. But if you are interested in picking this up, I actually have a deal for you guys. So if you would like to purchase yourself this Protoceratops from Papo, you can purchase it right now on Dan's Dinosaurs, and I have an actual discount code for you to use on there to get $6 off of this figure if you pick it up on Dan's Dinosaurs. Use the code Andy when you are checking out, and you will save $6 off of this figure if you purchase it again on Dan's Dinosaurs. Or, if you are interested, you can also purchase the PNSO Sinopliosaurus from there, aka the Siamosaurus, and get yourself $6 off of that figure as well. I'm definitely going to be letting everyone know in a news video coming up, but since you guys were here for the review of the Protoceratops, I figured I would give you kind of like early access to grab yourself again that discount for either this Protoceratops or the PNSO Sinopliosaurus, aka Siamosaurus. So, one way or another, again, if you're interested in picking it up, make sure you use that discount code. Grab yourself this Protoceratops from Dan's Dinosaurs, and make sure you also like, comment, and subscribe, and I will see you in the next review. Thanks for watching.